Welcome to Off the Canvas, the podcast dedicated to the passionate, curious, and deeply skilled people at the heart of the Miro community. I'll be your host, Lee Jeffrey, and each episode I'll be sitting down with a different guest for a real, honest conversation. Different topics, different experiences, and different perspectives. Hello, and welcome back to Off the Canvas. This episode is all about breaking down silos and what actually happens when you put data, AI, and business people in the same room. They all want the same outcome, but ask them to describe the problem and you'll get completely different answers. One's thinking about numbers, one's thinking about models, one's thinking about whether the systems can handle it, and the other's wondering why nobody seems to be talking about the same thing. Same room, no connection. And we're getting into how you can actually fix that. So my guest today is Martin Szugat. So Martin is a facilitator with over 20 years of experience in interdisciplinary collaboration. So that's the messy, complex work of getting data, business, AI, and IT professionals to genuinely understand each other. He's also the creator of the Data and AI Business Design Framework, which we'll be getting into during this conversation. And I met Martin this year at Canvas 26, and I'm delighted he can join us today. So Martin, welcome to Off the Canvas.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here as your second guest.
Yeah, no, thanks for joining us. I guess so let's start with Canvas 26. I know that's where we kind of met in person. How was the experience for you, and what was your biggest takeaways?
So what I really liked about Canvas 26 was the main topic. It was all about collaborative AI. So how can teams not only work together, but work better together with AI? And I think this really makes a point, because now people are just using AI as a single user tool, but Miro was all about using AI like a multi-user tool, like a multiplayer game. And I think this will make a huge difference in the future, how we use AI in organizations and our companies. On the other side, I had another experience. And when I get back to the airport, I take the train, and there was always this mind the gap signs, right? You know it from London. And I was, mind the gap. And then I realized, there was also a gap at Canvas 26 conference, because it was the gap between those business innovation people, like those workshop facilitators, innovation managers. And so this was one bubble, and there was another bubble. It's my bubble. It's the data science people, the AI engineers, the machine learning guys. And they weren't at this conference, right? They had their own conferences, and though you have these two bubbles and then there's the gap between. But that's exactly what Miro tries to do, is build bridges between those bubbles, but they weren't visiting the Miro Canvas conference. And this was something that really strikes me, and I was like, okay, how can I fix that in the future? And that's also why I'm here. So I think that's also a great opportunity to bring people from the bubbles together.
Yeah, it's an interesting takeaway. I think when I come to these events, being in product design, you kind of find those people who have got the same synergy in doing things that you're doing, so you can kind of pick up kind of insights and learn from others. But then also, I guess, those in the wider community are using Miro in different professions, and you can still kind of spark ideas and think about how they're using it in their world and bringing it into to yours. So yeah, it's an interesting takeaway. Yeah, but I think before we get into today's, it'd be great to learn a little bit more about you. So if you'd love to introduce yourself to our listeners, tell us a bit about who you are and the kind of work you do day to day, and I guess how Miro shows up as well.
Yeah, so I'm Martin. I'm the founder and managing director of Datentreiber. I started the company 12 years ago, exactly to do this, to bring bubbles together, to break silos. So I started my career, I think 30 years ago, in IT software development. Then I studied bioinformatics. You would call it data science today. In the past, there was no term data science, and we were not allowed to call it AI, but we did AI. So we did a lot of machine learning to analyze genome data and things like that. And then I started a company called SnipClip, which was, we developed Facebook apps for brand campaigns. So it went more into the business, into marketing. But what I realized is that those different departments in the companies, so IT, BI, business intelligence, data science, marketing, sales, they're not working together. And when I sold my first company, SnipClip, a year later, started my second company, Datentreiber. And I thought about, okay, I want to bring together those three different bubbles. I want to bring IT people with the AI people and the business people. And also I wanted to do something where I can bring all my experience and expertise from my past activities into one company. And that's how I That's why and how I started the Datentreiber. Yeah, and today, typical day. I don't have a typical day, so I'm doing a lot of lectures, trainings, workshops. Sometimes there's also time to design new canvases for the data and AI business design method or publish new Miro tools and templates. But I think the one constant is that every day I'm using Miro. So that's something you can count on.
No, it's a really interesting journey, like you say, going into different like businesses, building companies yourself, but that one common theme of breaking down those silos and getting people to communicate and talk to each other and understand each other. It sounds like you've gained a lot of experience in that, and we can delve in a little bit deeper and see if we can get some tips and that we can share with the listeners. But yeah, I'm definitely Miro every day. It's interesting. I think I do that. I spend every day in Miro. I don't think I spend a day without the tool, even in side projects or weekends, which I'm in the tool. And I can't remember, they did the Miro recap, don't they, at the end of the year? Or you've probably got yours at the end of last year, and it tells you how many hours you've spent in there and who you've spent it with, and it's like, oh wow. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that again.
It's like this addictive game, and what I'm also using it for private things like an N-store tree. One day I built or showed it my younger son. His birthday today, he's becoming 13, and now he's asking me to do a Miro workshop for his class in the school because he likes how Miro works. So yeah, maybe I'm also doing it now for his school.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless, aren't they? Oh, brilliant. No, thanks for sharing that. So I guess if we get into the episode today, so you spent 20 years in rooms where these disciplines are supposed to be working with each other, but in reality, it doesn't go that smoothly. So I guess if we look at that, the problem with silos, so why do you think like data scientists and AI teams and then those business stakeholders struggle to communicate with each other? What are the barriers?
Yeah. So first, I think you have to understand there are multiple barriers and not just one. There is this vertical barrier where people work in their department silos, though they are marketers. So they work in a marketing department and they have their own office where all the marketers come together. Then there's a sales department and a BI department, a data science, and AI, and IT, and whatsoever. And of course, it's much easier if you spend the whole day with people that are like-minded like you. So communication is much easier. You understand each other because you have the similar background, so you have the similar context, and so it's easier to communicate, to collaborate. But there is another barrier, and it's this horizontal. So, for example, if you're head of marketing, you don't want to talk to the AI engineer because, he's on a lower level like you. So you talk to the head of AI. But the head of AI won't be the guy who implements your AI solution to do better marketing. That will be the AI engineer. And so you have those two barriers or those two bubbles, right? The level and the domain. And what happens is, I think, because people have hard times to communicate with each other, what they do is something which is called throwing over the fences. So they write down their ideas in a Word document or in a PowerPoint slide, and then they throw it over the fence. Over the fence, the marketing AI fence, the head off to the AI engineer fence, and they throw it over and say, okay, here's my request, just do it. And the AI engineer implements the solution and throws it back and says, here's the solution. And you know what the result is, because you can't put every information, every detail into a PowerPoint. Often communication is about subtle things like the mimic and things like that. So we lose a lot of information by this tactic throwing over the fences. And that's often why people don't get what they requested. If I use PowerPoint for a request, I want an AI solution for marketing, maybe I get something bad, which is quite different to what I expected. And I think that's a real problem. For example, when I was in London, I had this meeting with an AI engineer, and he told me the story that at the beginning of the year, his executives sent him an email saying, okay, so this year is the year of agentic AI, do something with agentic AI. So it was not, okay, let's sit together and think about what we can do. Let's do a workshop together. No, it was, hey, we have to do something with agentic AI. AI is your business. That's your department to do something. And like a funny story, a few weeks earlier, I had the same discussion in the opposite direction. The head of process management of a big logistics company, he told me, well, now our data and AI engineers building so-called data and AI products, and they also throw it over the fences. They say, okay, here I now get another data product, which is all about the sales numbers for different specific region. And without asking, okay, are those the sales numbers you need? They just say, okay, here it is, and use it. And okay, but often it's not this. It's not what I need, right? And so I think that's a real problem in a business, that people don't talk to each other.
No, there's lots of themes in there that you went into. I think probably things that resonate with me as well. I think like when people start building relationships, you do build them within your own disciplines, don't you? And you start, I guess it gets into psychology, doesn't it? Around like people working together, then there being kind of wider teams, and you have that trust and relationships with those individuals. And it was interesting how you talked about hierarchy as well, and like how people communicate across hierarchies. And we always want to try and create those spaces, don't we, where there's no hierarchy and everybody has an opinion and everybody's opinion's kind of valid and given the same arena to be able to get that across.
Yeah, but you made a really important point here, and the keyword is trust. I mean, trust is not built by sending or doing PowerPoint ping pong. Don't build trust if I send you a PowerPoint and then you send a PowerPoint back and it's going on. That's not how you build trust. You build trust by interacting with people, by working together, meeting in a workshop, or even meeting on a Miro board. That's how you learn how the other people behave. You learn, if you promise me to do something until the next day, and then it's the next day and you deliver, I will put more trust in you, right? But that's how the positive feedback loop. By working together, you build trust. By building trust, you work better together. And this is exactly what not happens by sending emails or PowerPoints or using Slack or Teams chat messages. And also, another problem is this problem of language. So people have different jargons, technical jargons. For example, if I talk about AI, I mean AI in a broader sense. So I'm thinking of agentic AI, generative AI, predictive AI, analytical AI, so classic machine learning, but also modern deep learning, reinforcement learning. But most people, when you talk to business and you say AI, what they think of is ChatGPT. So with them, AI is just ChatGPT or maybe Gemini or just a large language model. And here you can see if you have two people, they use the same word, but they have completely different things to them. And that's also one of the big problems. And you don't solve it by doing PowerPoint ping pong.
Yeah. Yeah, that translation between teams is interesting, isn't it? How people are using different language. And I guess, it's how you empower that collaboration between teams, isn't it? I'd be interested to get into that in a bit. So I guess we've mentioned AI as what you've been working as for quite a while there by the sounds of it. But how have you seen that come into these environments as people have started kind of understanding these tools a little bit more, like ChatGPT or even Claude or other tools? How are they bringing that into kind of maybe how they're creating these ping pong documents, or how they're actually bringing them into the workshops themselves?
Yeah, I think AI makes this really much more worse, because what you can now do, in the past you needed several hours to create a PowerPoint document with, let's say, 10 slides or 50 slides, or if you want to do 100 slides, it will really take a long time. But now with AI, it's so much easier to create content, to generate. That's what it's called, generative AI, to generate content. So what happens is that a lot of people, it's like PowerPoint ping pong on steroids, right? Like an amplifier. But the quality does not get better. The quality of the thoughts which are part of the PowerPoint are not getting better if you just generate it. And what happens is that the output of each individual is increased by generative AI. And this PowerPoint is sent to another guy in the company, and she also uses AI to create a summary. So that's ridiculous. So one guy uses ChatGPT to inflate the thoughts into a PowerPoint presentation, into 100 slides or whatever. And the next guy then uses ChatGPT to summarize it and to boil it down to, again, 5 bullet points. The only thing what happens is that you maximize your token consumption. So it helps OpenAI traffic, but it does not create any value for the company, because what companies don't understand is that results or outcome is produced by a process. And a process is a multi-step, multi-action, multi-decision workflow with multiple people involved. And you have to redesign and optimize the whole process, and not just single work steps within this process. And it does not make sense if you increase the output at the beginning and That's also what all those analysis and studies show you, that the productivity is not increased in companies with AI. The opposite is happening. People have to spend much more time because they have to read much more content. They have to check much more content, and people got overwhelmed by this whole. You could call it AI slop or work slop. It's too much, and I think that's really a problem with AI now.
Yeah, no, you obviously identified a key problem there around throwing things over the fence, and that's only kind of making it worse because it's accelerating
Yeah.
that process, isn't it? Okay, let's maybe try and get into, I guess, your role as a facilitator there, and what good facilitation looks like there. So, what when you go into these companies and you're helping support that, or whether you're setting up a session, what does your role as facilitator look like in those sessions, and how do you maybe combat some of these issues?
So I think as a facilitator, especially my role as a facilitator is I have multiple roles. So most companies hire me as a consultant because they expect them that I tell them what they should do. But this is exactly what I'm not trying to do, because I don't have all this domain knowledge they have. And often this domain knowledge is implicit. They didn't have written it down. They have it in their brain, in their minds, right? So my job as a facilitator is more like a moderator. So I have to ask the right questions. And I think this is the biggest advantage I have as an external facilitator, because they don't expect me to know everything. So they know or expect that I will ask questions, and I ask a lot of silly questions. I'll call it the silly questions, because often those silly questions are exactly the right questions to make them think, to rethink, for example, their business process, and rethink, okay, yeah, it does not make sense to use ChatGPT to generate PowerPoints and then to send PowerPoints to the next guy and he uses ChatGPT to summarize the PowerPoint. So that's not a valuable process. So just by asking the right questions, I think as a facilitator, you can do a great job. Sometimes you're also a mediator because there is a conflict. Often the conflicts are exactly because they use different terms for the same thing, or they use the same term for different things, or vice versa. So that's also a problem. And you have to recognize it and then help them to understand their misunderstanding. Maybe there's also a problem with priorities. So for example, the IT department or has an objective and key results, like you have to decrease costs, right? And the marketing department is told, yeah, but we have to increase sales. And now they have to work together to use AI to increase sales. But if you would use AI for marketing, you would add another cost factor. So you would increase the IT costs in order to increase the marketing leads or marketing revenue. And often those different priorities or objectives and key results creates tension. And also your job is to mediate those tensions and find a solution, or sometimes it's just enough to state that there is a conflict of interests, right? So I think as a facilitator, you have multiple roles and you have to know which role you are in the specific moment.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned earlier in the conversation about, I guess, building bridges. I think you mentioned, and I guess like companies need that impartial person or view to come in to ask those silly questions, like you said, and they, I guess, trust, you mentioned as well, and like it's interesting around, they will trust somebody who maybe is outside of the team and you're brought in with that expertise, but you're just trying to get people to communicate better, understand each other, and get everybody aligned to collaborate. It's an interesting role, isn't it?
Yeah, I think also, this is just, as a facilitator, you're also a translator. So you translate, for example, what the business manager told and you translate into business requirements for the AI team. And if the AI engineers come up with a solution, you translate it back into something that the business manager understands. I think that's also one of your important roles if you have especially those multidisciplinary workshops as a facilitator. Yeah, I think that there are more as a facilitator. You mentioned this, that people hire external facilitators. It's another thing why I think an external facilitator is very important and a good thing to do. And this has to do something with the self-understanding of what a good consultant is. So most people think a good consultant is you tell the client what he wants to hear. So that's what most people do, especially if they're an employee and it's your boss and you don't want to get in a conflict with your boss. You understand what he or she wants to hear and you tell them, right? Um, on Also, a lot of external consultants do this because it's the client, right? They don't want to lose the client. But I think that's the wrong way to go, because you are, as an external facilitator, you're the only one who can tell the client, your contact, the things he doesn't want to hear. And that's exactly what what I think you should do, is tell them those things they don't want to hear, because often those are I mean, it's like if you're going to the doctor and saying, oh yeah, I have a pain, and you just hear it's a painkiller. But that's what you want to hear, right? But often the pain has a root cause. And if it's a good doctor, he will ask you questions and tell you maybe, oh, Martin, you drank too much alcohol. You should stop drinking too much. That's maybe something you don't want to hear, but that's the hard truth. And that's how you solve your problems. Because in the end, I mean, your job as a facilitator is problem solving. Whether you're doing a strategic workshop, in the end, it's all about, okay, what are the problems that prevent us from executing the strategy? You call it a gap analysis. I mean, but it's all about problems. Or whether it's a workshop about a new product or a new solution, solution, it's all about solving a problem for a specific user. So in the end, the key skill is problem solving.
Tell them what they don't want to hear is a very, very powerful quote. No, I guess if we get into, we mentioned before about the data and AI business design framework that you crafted. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that and the problem that it was created to solve?
Yeah. So I started creating it as part of one of my first projects for GfK, which was a market research company, and they understand or realize that market research is a business model which might come to an end because people or companies are start collecting their own data. So they came up with the idea, okay, maybe we should go into the data-driven analytics business. And they hired me as an external facilitator to help a team to identify potential new product ideas. And I was also trained in design thinking. I had an internship at IDEO. I was using at the Unternehmertum. I was trained using the business model canvas. So that's what was my toolkit, my tool set. And I started using the business model canvas to identify or potential new product ideas. But then I realized that we also have to talk about the data landscape. We also have to talk about analytics and AI maturity. So I started to build my own canvases and just using PowerPoint. And that's how I started to build this data and AI business design kit. It started with, I think, 3 or 4 canvases. And now it grows to a toolkit of 21 canvases. And it's really... Wow. It covers all the way from, so what's your business strategy? What's your business model? What is the core business process? What are use cases? So it's all about the business understanding and then also going into the user understanding. So we are talking a lot about use cases in AI, but I mean, it should not be called use cases. It should be called user cases, because it's the case that a user wants to apply AI to the data in order to solve a problem, to fulfill an objective. We have also a canvas. It's called Analytics and AI Use Case Canvas. And then it's also about, of course, data and AI understanding. I mean, if you want to build a AI solution, you need to think about context engineering. So you need to think about, where do I get the data for the AI or for the analytics? So there is a data monetization canvas, a data landscape canvas, and so on. In the end, data and AI business design should help you to create value from data and AI for your business.
Oh, it's an interesting journey you've been on there. It sounds like it's quite, obviously it's a complex process, and there's a number of canvases there to choose from. And I guess seeing it as those pillars you mentioned around like business understanding versus user understanding versus kind of data and AI understanding. And I guess we spoke earlier about kind of disciplines and silos. So how would you get people to kind of lead their area of expertise, but still kind of cross-collaborate on the solution?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the biggest challenge. The easiest part is if they all join a workshop and you go through this business, user, and data understanding. I mean, someone told me, Martin, your workshop is really hard because we have to think so much. Yeah, I mean, it's called design thinking or system thinking or whatsoever. To be honest, that's the easy part. The hard part is to get exactly all the people in one room on one day or on one Miro board because I mean, you need people from different departments. For the business understanding, you need the business owner, the business domain experts. For the user understanding, you don't need, I mean, I have one meeting where they invited all the heads, the head of marketing, the head of sales, the head of IT, the head of process management. And I said, okay, guys, but we're doing a sales analytics workshop. So, and sales analytics is probably used by the sales manager and not by the head of sales. And I said, yeah, it's used by the sales manager. And I asked, okay, then invite a sales manager to the workshop. And he said, oh no, that's not a good idea, Martin. You can't do that. And I said, he would disrupt the whole workshop. I said, no, I mean, that's a really good idea. Invite the user. Said, no, Martin, you have to believe me. And I said, okay, I don't want this. I'll discuss it with you, but I won't argue with you. And we started the workshop. And after, I think, an hour or so, I realized, because they always told me when I asked them, what does the customer journey look like? They said, on paper, it should like this, but in reality, we don't know. And after 1.5 hours, I said, okay, so let's invite the sales manager. And the sales manager came and we showed them a canvas. And I said, yeah, look, this is the customer journey. And he laughed and said, yeah, maybe on paper, but that's not the real customer journey. And then a workshop worked. Yeah, and also need those data and AI guys. If you want to design a data and AI strategy, you should invite the experts and not just think about what AI could do and let's do. I mean, often people have this more saying that there's written more fantasy in PowerPoint than in Word documents, meaning a lot of PowerPoint presentations are more about fantasy, what I could probably do and not do. But I think the real challenge here is to get the people in the workshop. And I think the most important thing is to first identify the right people and then talk to them and make clear that this is really teamwork, that we need all of them in order to come up with a solution that works for all of them. The most work is done before the workshop and not during the workshop.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think the planning, like you said, getting the right people in the room, setting the right expectations. And it got me thinking there about, I guess you've been quite a lot of these sessions. We're talking about how we might break down silos. When you go into these sessions, do you always see do you always see the breakdown there? You can you got the signals to know that. Do you ever get into these sessions and it's kind of working well and the signals are good? And is there a moment in a workshop where something happens or something changes where you start to feel all these silos are breaking down and you can identify it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's not always the same moment or the same part of the process. Sometimes it happens during business understanding, sometimes during user, sometimes during data understanding. But I think every workshop, you have this moment where the light bulb turns on, right? So, for example, I had one workshop during the lunch break. The data scientist came to me and said, Martin, thanks for the workshop. I'm working here for 6 months right now. And this is the first time I understand the business model of my company. Because it was the first time they sit together, they sketched the business model on the business model canvas, and they really discussed in detail about how their business works. I think this shared understanding is really what creates a good strategy and a good solution in the end, because everyone then better understands what are the real problems. It's not like, okay, let's use AI to generate PowerPoints or let's use AI for this or that. But it's really about, now we know that AI can solve our problems. Right. First, identify and prioritize the right problems. You need first a better understanding. I mean, that's part of the problem-solving skill, is to have a deep and common understanding of the business processes, and so on.
Yeah, that shared understanding is vital, isn't it? And it's interesting you mentioned there about, I guess, that communication and feedback from the participants, and that's when you can start seeing the value that they're getting from the session, which is great. But that's how they're appreciating being involved and how that's helping them understand further as well.
I mean, and that's also how you create trust. I mean, think of yourself. You trust people much more if they have the same understanding, because you say something to them and they mirror it back. And you immediately understand, okay, this guy understands me, has an empathy for me. Without a shared understanding, there will be no empathy. And without empathy, there will be no trust. And in the end, I mean, you can design the best strategy, the best solution you can think of. But if the other person who is responsible for using it or implementing it does not understand it, he won't accept it and he won't use it and he won't do everything to make it happen. And I mean, that's why most strategies fail. They do not fail because they are silly strategies. They fail because people don't understand it, they don't accept it, and they don't support it. It's about acceptance. And acceptance requires a shared understanding.
Yeah, and that then empowers the execution. Yeah, that's really important, isn't it?
And this is exactly why you need a strategy. You need a strategy to motivate people, to align all the people on one common goal. And the basis for all of this is a common understanding. Because if they have different understandings, they will go into different directions and you don't have this alignment.
Yeah, it can get into like, I guess, purpose for a person, or why am I here? What am I doing? And then that, I guess, momentum then about them executing that.
Exactly. The purpose is if you design a strategy or design a solution, and there are multiple people involved, the purpose is what each of those individual persons takes out for them, for their person. Okay, my purpose in this strategy project and this product project is, for example, to design a better human-centric user interface, is to deliver a better AI model that reduces our costs because we know we're running out of money, right? For example. Or we want to conquer a new market. But the high level strategy is not about purpose. Purpose comes from, I understand as part of the team what's my purpose or what's my mission as part of this team. And I think this is, I mean, just take a look on many companies. Most people don't know why they are doing it. And yeah, it's their purpose within the company.
So I know you've mentioned Miro a lot during the conversation. You say you're in there every day. I guess we can just touch on that around, I guess Miro is a visual collaboration tool, and how does that kind of fit into your process? How did you kind of come about using it, and maybe some of the features that are enabling this collaboration and you get into the result that you need to?
Yeah. So, and when we started using Miro during the pandemic, of course, before we had a lot of on-site or offline workshops where we printed out the canvas and you really used real sticky notes. And during the pandemic, that was not possible. But after the pandemic, we realized that it's often, so it's easier to do a workshop because you don't have to bring all the people on one location. And sometimes this was really a problem to find a day or 2 days. Often we did 2 days of workshops where they don't have those 2 days where they can fly in from different countries, for example. So what we do is often just not doing a 2-day on-site workshop, but a 4 half days online workshops using Miro. And the other thing I think which really helps, I mean, if you write down a sticky note with a pen, my writing is not so beautiful, right? So hard something to read it after a few weeks and know what we've written down here. But that's also something you have it in a digitalized version. Now, of course, with AI, that's really great because you can select everything on the board and then create me a summary presentation because the board members, they want to know what the AI strategy looked like. And then you can just say, okay, if you need a PowerPoint or a few Miro slides, we can create it from Miro. I think that's really great. And that's why we are using Miro a lot. On the other side, what we see is often Miro acts as another barrier, right? Because not all people are familiar with those online whiteboarding tools and with virtual sticky notes. Some people really have problems with this visual thinking. I didn't thought about this, but I talked to a lot of people over the last years and said, Martin, I really like more like a Word document or Excel sheet, which is more structured. And this Miro board is so chaotic and confusing. I don't know where I'm on the Miro board. I can't navigate it. And yeah, also people are so overwhelmed by those many Miro features to say, okay, that's too complicated for me. There are so many buttons on the left side. So what should I click? Some people really also have troubles. I mean, if they come to a workshop, for example, we also use Miro sometimes on on-site workshops and they forget about to bring their mouse. And they have a problem with their trackpad to use Miro, right? So I think that's really something to consider. So what we came up with a solution is, for example, that we do the first day on site with printed canvases and real sticky notes. And then I digitalize all the sticky notes and rebuild it on a Miro board. And then for the second day, we split it into halves and do it 2 online workshops, like for 2 times 2 hours. So So I think that's also something you really have to think about is if you're working in front of a computer, don't do it. I mean, 90 minutes is fine. 2 hours is the maximum. After 2 hours, make a break and half an hour, let people move away from the monitor, from the screen, and don't do a 8 hours online workshop. 2 times 2 hours, that's the maximum for one day.
Yeah. That was great learnings in here, like you mentioned around the move to remote workshops versus in person. It's interesting how you're creating that kind of hybrid model there from what you've learned, and I guess respecting that as well around introducing tools to people, and that's a barrier in itself. And it just goes to show, as a moderator or a facilitator, when you're creating these sessions, there's lots to consider around how you're making it inclusive to people to be able to work in these environments. You said about language earlier, about translating and then being able to write that on a sticky note, and then sometimes maybe you don't write as much as you might write because you run out of space.
Yeah.
Whereas in a digital world, you've got enough space. But it's, I like the way that you're combining the two worlds there and making it work for what you've learned for the actual environment that you're working for.
I think exactly there's limited space is also a good thing, because what I see, if I compare those on-site workshops with pen and paper and the online workshops with Miro whiteboard sticky notes, is that for on-site, you have less sticky notes, but you have more discussions and a better, let's call it, quality of the sticky notes. So the quality of the final canvas, it's much better. It's much more focused. It's much more clearer. If you do it in Miro, you have a lot more output. So a lot of more sticky notes, but you need a lot more time to make it to the point, more focused, to get in more clarity. And that's also one reason why I really like those mixed mode is start. And another reason why I like this mixed mode is, again, about this trust. I mean, you don't build trust just talking to people on the camera. I mean, we met in London. We spent the evening together. We spent the whole conference together. That's why we have our foundation. We can build on. So the conversation is much easier now. But if you start bringing people together that didn't work together before, like the head of marketing, the AI engineer, the IT guy, whatever, and you just use Teams and Miro, you don't create this trust and you don't create a team. So you have to bring people on one place. They have to spend lunch together, dinner together. I mean, the most important thing in workshops is the break. So the coffee break, the lunch break, that's where real value, where real connections are created, and not during the Miro workshop, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting to facilitate that, isn't it? Like those moments where people are kind of having those side conversations and building those little bits of trust. I think when you said the word quality there, and it got me thinking about, I guess after you've run a workshop session, you've got this output that's on the canvas, and those can probably look quite similar, as there's quite a lot of sticky notes here and you've got things to take away. But when you step back and go, well, actually, what was the quality of that session? If you're assessing yourself as a facilitator, what good conversations happened? What was the quality of the actual input that was given on the board? Did we get to the solution? It's interesting, isn't it, when you look at that? I guess if we just, starting to kind of look to wrap up the session, if someone is listening today and they're looking to run workshops, maybe they've been in sessions where they've had these problems around breaking down silos, what would be your key tips there and practical kind of takeaways? Maybe if you've got one key thing to try and make it successful, and then maybe one common mistake you've seen people do or you've seen happen in the industry.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is really start easy. So for example, we often start with sketching the business model, because that's something they maybe all understand, and maybe they already know the business model canvas and they know their business model. So don't start with something complicated, because this working together in this specific team setting is new to them. Maybe Miro is new to them. Maybe the canvas or whatever, the whole approach is new to them. So that's really something I recommend, is start very easy so people can move in easily. And I think one of the most common errors, or also one thing I did wrong many times, is you as a facilitator are not the one who should talk the most. So what happens, for example, if there's a silence and people don't like silence, and you as a facilitator probably also don't like silence, you start talking and you start sketching the strategy for them, start sketching the solution for them. And I did this one time, and in the end, I mean, they were quite happy. They relaxed and went back and thought, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. Yeah, I know a lot about machine learning and data and IT, but I didn't understand their business model well enough or their business process. So in the end, I came up with a good solution, but with a right solution, but it was the right solution for the wrong problem, right? And that's also what often happens, that you build the right solution for the wrong problem. And this is exactly what should not happen. So it would be much better for me in this situation to ask more questions and say, okay, what's your business objective? So why didn't you reach this objective? Well, what prevents you from fulfilling your objective? What's the gap here? What's the problem here? So ask questions. It's much more important than giving the answers.
Yeah. Super important. Yeah, so I think I can definitely resonate with this about getting people to start on something if they can achieve something together quite easily, which is less complex. It gives you that momentum to work together, and doing less as a facilitator, which is a hard thing to do, like with those silences. I remember one session where it was very early on where I was trying to get people to kind of sketch, and people I think everyone thinks they're a designer now, but I think back then people are scared of being judged on what they're drawing and drawing skills in those environments, and I've ended up trying to kind of sketch their ideas or being the sketcher, and then that's your role then, isn't it? And they expect that, whereas you want their ideas on the canvas, don't you? It's good learning, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean that's why we invited people from different domains like data, AI, IT, like the business domain, because they are the experts. They know better, and especially if you're an external facilitator, I mean, they know better. It's their business. They should know better, and often they know better, but sometimes they're afraid to talk openly. Because as I said, so if you are the guy who talks about the problem and pinpoints the right problem, often you blame the messenger. But this is something you need to create a trusted environment. Again, it's all about trust. You need to create a trusted environment where everybody is motivated to talk freely about the problems. Because in the end, strategy or solution design or whatever you call it is about solving the right problem and not the wrong problems. I mean, getting back to AI, at the moment, I think we are solving the wrong problems with AI. Our problem is not to generate PowerPoint slides.
No, I think everyone's on that journey, aren't they? And that's flown by, Martin. I think we only really scratched the surface there about kind of breaking down silos as a topic. I've definitely learned a lot from this conversation. I've took some notes here as I've been doing the session, and I can't wait to watch this back. But no, thanks for joining us. I guess before we close out, where can people find more about you, your work, and the data and AI business design framework?
Yeah, so if you want to know more about me, just go to LinkedIn, search for my name, and connect on LinkedIn. I would love that. Also, you can search for my name on Miroverse. So on the Miro template directory, there you'll find our Miro tools and templates. And if you want to know more about the method, just go to our website, Datentreiber.com. There you find under the methods section an overview of all the canvases with descriptions and things like that. And also we have a community at community.datentreiber.com, which is completely free, which you can join. And there we publish a lot of articles about data, AI strategy, solution design, but also, of course, how you use our Miro tools and templates. We also have once a month a Miro lunch and learn online. We have some Miro meetups now coming in Berlin, Munich, and Zurich, for example.
Oh, nice.
So there are a lot of ways, to talk to us. And
amazing. No, very busy. But yeah, I'll share those links in the various resources. No, amazing. No, that brings us to the end of the second episode. So yeah, thanks for listening, and thank you to Martin for joining us. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us wherever you're tuning in from. And look out for future episodes as well, where we'll be meeting more people from the Miro community. So yeah, bye for now, and see you next time. Thank you for listening to Off the Canvas, the podcast dedicated to the passionate, curious, and deeply skilled people at the heart of the Miro community. Please like, share, and follow us to stay updated on future episodes, and join us again soon for more insightful conversations with the community.